Space Station Nexus 9 was the pride of the Galactic Confederation, a gleaming marvel of engineering that housed representatives from 27 different sentient species. Well, 28 if you counted humans, which most species didn't, at least not with any measure of respect. Marcus Quill wiped the sweat from his brow as he tightened another bolt on the station's primary cooling system. As far as the Galactic Confederation was concerned, humans were the equivalent of a toddler who had accidentally wandered into a physicist convention. Sure, they'd managed interstellar travel, but they'd done it all wrong according to the other species. Too much duct tape. Not enough quantum entanglement. The usual complaints. "Hey, Quill." The voice of his supervisor, Lieutenant Commander Grix, echoed through his comm unit. Grix was a Valorian, a species that resembled a 7-foot-tall praying mantis with azure exoskeleton and compound eyes that could see into 4 different dimensions. Allegedly. Marcus had his doubts about that 4th dimension thing. "Yes, sir," Marcus responded, sliding out from under the coolant regulator. "You're needed on Deck 37. Environmental controls are acting up again." "You want me?" Marcus sighed. Being the station's only human maintenance worker meant he got all the jobs nobody else wanted. Apparently, thumbs were still a novelty to about half the species in the Confederation. "On my way, sir." Marcus collected his tools and headed for the transport tube. As he waited, 2 Xanthari diplomats scuttled past, their translucent bodies glowing with bioluminescent anxiety. They were chittering to each other in their native language, but Marcus's universal translator picked up fragments. "Escaped from quarantine. Highly dangerous predator. Station security on high alert." Great, just what he needed. Some dangerous alien critter loose on the station while he was elbow-deep in environmental controls. The transport tube arrived and Marcus stepped inside, punching in his destination. "Deck 37. The tube's AI announced in a pleasant voice that somehow still managed to sound condescending. "Warning, security alert in adjacent sectors. Proceed with caution." "Thanks for the heads up," Marcus muttered. The tube deposited him on Deck 37, which was eerily quiet. Usually, this area bustled with activity. It housed several diplomatic offices and a popular interspecies cafe that served the only decent approximation of coffee in this quadrant of the galaxy. Marcus made his way to the environmental control room, his boots echoing in the deserted corridor. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a complex array of machinery that regulated everything from oxygen levels to gravity intensity. According to his diagnostic pad, the atmospheric scrubbers needed recalibration. Simple enough. As he worked, Marcus couldn't help but think about his position here. Humans had only joined the Galactic Confederation 50 years ago, stumbling onto the galactic stage with their primitive warp drives and quaint notions about peaceful exploration. The established species had looked down their various appendages at the newcomers, assigning them the lowest-tier jobs while assessing their potential for advancement. Marcus had been on Nexus 9 for 3 years now. In that time, he'd fixed everything from quantum fluctuators to alien toilets, yet he was still treated like he might accidentally blow up the station if left unsupervised for too long. The irony wasn't lost on him that whenever something broke, they called the human. His diagnostic pad beeped, indicating the recalibration was complete. As Marcus packed up his tools, the station-wide announcement system crackled to life. "Attention all personnel," came the voice of Station Commander Lyrics, a Dravian known for his perpetual state of controlled panic. "Security alert level has been raised to crimson. A Vorlax beast has escaped from the xenobiological research lab. All personnel are advised to return to their quarters immediately. If you encounter the creature, I repeat, do not make eye contact or sudden movements. Security teams are deployed. Lyrics out." Marcus froze. A Vorlax beast? He'd heard stories about those creatures' apex predators from the nightmare world of Vorla Prime. Supposedly, they could tear through reinforced bulkheads and had a peculiar ability to sense fear. Some xenobiologists claimed they actually fed on terror. "Perfect," Marcus muttered, shouldering his tool bag. "I'll just head back to my quarters and let security handle this one." As he turned toward the exit, the lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in an ominous red glow. "Even more perfect," Marcus grumbled. Then he heard a low, rumbling growl that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. Marcus froze, his heart pounding in his chest. Slowly he turned around. And there it was. The Vorlax beast. 8 feet of rippling muscle covered in obsidian scales that seemed to absorb the emergency lighting rather than reflect it. Its head was a nightmarish blend of reptile and insect features, with multiple eyes arranged in a pattern that defied evolutionary logic. But it was the teeth that drew Marcus's attention, 3 rows of serrated daggers that could probably chew through the station's hull if the creature got bored. Marcus knew he should run, or scream, or possibly both simultaneously. But some primal part of his brain, the part that had kept his ancestors alive on the savannas of Earth, told him that running would be the last mistake he'd ever make. So instead, he stood perfectly still, trying to control his breathing, as rumors about the Vorlax echoed in his mind. They could smell fear. They enjoyed playing with their food. They were smart enough to hack door controls. The Vorlax tilted its head, studying Marcus with unnerving intensity. Then it did something completely unexpected. It sat down. Marcus blinked, wondering if he was hallucinating due to terror. The Vorlax, the most feared predator in 3 sectors of the galaxy, was sitting on its haunches like an oversized puppy, regarding him with what could only be described as curiosity. "A good monster?" Marcus ventured, immediately feeling ridiculous. The Vorlax tilted its head the other way, making a sound that was halfway between a purr and a garbage disposal backing up. Then, to Marcus's utter bewilderment, it scooted forward on its haunches and nudged his tool bag with its massive snout. The door behind Marcus hissed open, and 3 Zebraxian security officers burst in, their stun batons crackling with energy. They froze when they saw the scene before them, a human standing mere feet away from the galaxy's most efficient killing machine, which appeared to be sniffing his tool bag. "Don't move, human," the lead officer hissed, his zebra-striped face contorted with tension. "We'll create a diversion, and you run for the door." The Vorlax's head snapped up at the new arrivals, and a sound emerged from its throat that chilled Marcus to the bone, a deep, reverberating growl that seemed to make the very air vibrate. The beast rose to its full height, positioning itself between Marcus and the security team. "It's protecting me?" Marcus whispered in disbelief. The security officers began to back away slowly. "This is Security Chief Zorn," the lead officer spoke into his comm. "We have located the Vorlax on Deck 37, Environmental Control Room. It appears to have claimed a human." "Claimed?" Marcus squeaked. "What does that mean, claimed?" Chief Zorn ignored him, still backing toward the door. "Send backup with tranquilizer cannons and inform xenobiology. They're going to want to see this." The Vorlax continued its threatening display until the security team was out of sight. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, it turned back to Marcus, its demeanor instantly changing from terrifying predator to something almost friendly. "Meh. This can't be happening," Marcus muttered, running a shaky hand through his hair. The station's announcement system crackled again. "Attention, Marcus Quill." It was Commander Lyrix. "Our sensors indicate you are in proximity to the escaped Vorlax. Please remain calm. A containment team is en route to your location. Do not attempt to flee or engage with the creature." "Little late for that advice," Marcus replied to the empty air. The Vorlax nudged his tool bag again, making that strange purring sound. Against all better judgment, Marcus knelt down and opened the bag. The creature's multiple eyes lit up with what looked disturbingly like excitement. "What are you looking for, big guy?" Marcus asked, still not quite believing he was having a conversation with a beast that featured prominently in the nightmares of half the galaxy. The Vorlax reached out with one clawed appendage delicately, as if afraid of breaking something, and tapped a canister of multi-species lubricant spray. Marcus raised an eyebrow and picked up the canister. "This? You want this?" The purring intensified. Taking what was probably the biggest risk of his life, Marcus sprayed a small amount of the lubricant into the air. The Vorlax's reaction was immediate and shocking. It rolled onto its back, wiggling in apparent ecstasy, making sounds that reminded Marcus of his neighbor's cat when it found a sunny spot. That was how the containment team found them 5 minutes later, a human maintenance worker spraying lubricant for a blissed-out Vorlax beast that was rolling around like a kitten with catnip. "I don't understand," said Dr. Eclatix, the head xenobiologist, his 3 eye stalks extended to their full length in astonishment. "Vorlax beasts are apex predators. They don't behave like this." The containment team stood at a safe distance, their tranquilizer cannons trained on the Vorlax, which was now sitting beside Marcus, leaning against his leg with what could only be described as contentment. "Mr. Quill," Commander Lyrix's voice came through the comm. "Can you explain what is happening?" Marcus looked down at the fearsome creature that was now nudging his hand for more lubricant spray. "I honestly have no idea, Commander. It just likes me, or maybe it likes my lubricant spray. I'm not really sure which." There was a long pause. "Remarkable," Lyrix finally said. "Dr. Eclatix, can we safely remove Mr. Quill from this situation?" Before the xenobiologist could answer, the Vorlax seemed to understand the question. It rose to its full height, positioning itself protectively in front of Marcus, and let out a warning growl that sent half the containment team scrambling backward. "I believe that would be inadvisable," Commander Dr. Eclatix replied, his voice trembling slightly. "The Vorlax appears to have formed some kind of bond with the human. Separating them might provoke a violent response." "So what are you saying?" Marcus asked, a note of panic entering his voice. "That I'm stuck with this thing?" The Vorlax turned to look at him, and Marcus could have sworn it looked hurt by his tone. "For the time being," Dr. Eclatix confirmed, "it would be safest for all concerned if you remain together." Marcus stared at the scientist in disbelief, then looked down at the Vorlax, which was now rubbing its massive head against his hip like an oversized cat. "Great," Marcus sighed. "Just great. I didn't even want a goldfish." Life with a Vorlax beast as an unwanted roommate turned out to be exactly as complicated as Marcus had feared. For starters, his quarters designed for a single humanoid occupant were decidedly not built to accommodate an 8-foot-tall apex predator with a tendency to knock things over with its massive tail. "Stop that," Marcus hissed as the Vorlax, which he'd reluctantly named Fang after running through several much less polite options, investigated his collection of rare earth succulents. "Those are from my mother's garden." Fang made an apologetic rumbling sound and backed away from the plants, only to become fascinated by Marcus's holoprojector. Before Marcus could intervene, Fang had pressed a paw against it, activating Marcus's music playlist. The sudden burst of ancient earth rock music caused the beast to leap nearly 3 feet in the air, knocking over a chair in the process. "This is not going to work," Marcus groaned, collapsing onto his bed. The station's science team had been studying the bizarre bond between human and Vorlax for 3 days now, running tests and observations that seemed to yield more questions than answers. The only concrete finding was that separation attempts were a terrible idea. When they tried to lure Fang into a separate containment area, the creature had nearly torn through reinforced titanium doors to get back to Marcus. Marcus's comm unit chimed. "Mr. Quill," came the voice of Commander Lyrix, "your presence is requested in Conference Room Alpha with your companion." "We'll be right there, sir," Marcus replied, eyeing Fang, who was now curiously pawing at his sock drawer. "Leave those alone. Those are clean." Navigating the station's corridors with Fang in tow was an exercise in public relations management. Other species would flatten themselves against walls or duck into rooms when they saw the Vorlax approaching. The fact that Marcus was casually walking beside the creature only seemed to confuse them more. "He's not going to eat you," Marcus found himself explaining to a trembling Xinthari diplomat who had wedged himself into a maintenance alcove. "He's actually quite friendly." As if to demonstrate, Fang made that strange purring sound and attempted to nuzzle the diplomat, who promptly fainted. "See? Friendly," Marcus sighed, stepping over the unconscious diplomat. Conference room Alpha was packed with station officials, scientists, and security personnel when Marcus and Fang arrived. The room instantly fell silent, all eyes and various other sensory organs fixed on the odd pair. "Ah, Mr. Quill," Commander Lyric said from his position at the head of the table. "And Fang, please have a seat." Marcus looked at the standard issue chair, then at Fang, who was easily 3 times too large for it. "I think we'll stand, sir." "Yes, quite right," Lyrics agreed hastily. "We've convened this meeting to discuss your situation. Dr. Ecletics has some findings to share." The xenobiologist rose, his eye stalks quivering with scientific excitement. "After extensive analysis, we believe we understand the nature of the bond between Mr. Quill and the Vorlax specimen." He activated a holo display showing complex molecular structures. "It appears that the multi-species lubricant spray that Mr. Quill uses in his maintenance work contains a compound remarkably similar to a nurturing hormone produced by adult Vorlax beasts." Marcus blinked. "You're saying it thinks I'm its parent?" "Not precisely," Dr. Ecletics corrected. "More like a trusted pack member. In Vorlax society, certain members are designated as protectors for the young and vulnerable. They emit this hormone to identify themselves. So my lubricant spray basically marks me as a friendly?" Marcus asked incredulously. "Indeed," Dr. Ecletics confirmed. "But there's more. The Vorlax species possesses a highly developed sense of reciprocal altruism. Once it identified you as a protector, it assumed the obligation to protect you in return." Fang chose this moment to nuzzle Marcus's neck affectionately, nearly knocking him over in the process. "Fascinating," said Commander Lyrics. "But this still leaves us with the practical issue of a Vorlax beast roaming freely on my station. Mr. Quill cannot perform his duties with this creature in tow." As if understanding the threat of separation, Fang emitted a low growl that caused several people at the table to push their chairs back nervously. "Actually, sir," Marcus spoke up, surprising himself, "I've been thinking about that. Fang seems pretty intelligent. Maybe instead of trying to separate us, we could train him?" The room erupted in a cacophony of objections and outrage. "Train a Vorlax? Preposterous. The human has clearly lost his mind." Commander Lyrics raised a hand for silence. "Mr. Quill, Vorlax beasts are not domesticated animals. They are highly dangerous predators." "With all due respect, sir," Marcus countered, "so were wolves on Earth before they became dogs. Fang has shown no aggression toward me. In fact, he's been protective and, well, kind of affectionate." Fang chose that moment to lick Marcus's face with a tongue roughly the texture of sandpaper, causing him to wince. "See? Affectionate." Dr. Ecletics' eye stalks vibrated with interest. "There is precedent in xenobiology for predator species forming symbiotic relationships. Perhaps the human has a point." Commander Lyrics looked deeply skeptical, but sighed in resignation. "Very well, Mr. Quill. You may attempt to train the Vorlax. But at the first sign of danger to station personnel, security will intervene. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, sir," Marcus agreed, patting Fang's massive head. "Hear that, buddy? You're staying with me, but you've got to behave." Fang made a sound that could have been interpreted as agreement or indigestion. It was hard to tell. As the meeting dispersed, Lieutenant Commander Grix approached Marcus with an expression that, on a mantis-like face, was difficult to read but seemed to contain elements of both fascination and horror. "So, Quill, you're keeping the galaxy's most feared predator as a pet," he said, mandibles clicking. "I suppose this means you'll need a larger quarters assignment." "That would be helpful, sir," Marcus admitted. "Fang knocked over my shower cubicle this morning." Grix's compound eyes studied the Vorlax for a long moment. "You know, in all my years, I've never seen anything like this. Humans truly are the most unpredictable species in the Confederation." As they walked away, Marcus could swear he heard something new in Grix's voice. Was it respect? It took Marcus exactly 2 weeks to discover that Fang wasn't just intelligent, he was possibly smarter than several diplomats currently stationed on Nexus 9. The revelation came during a routine maintenance call to the station's communication array. Marcus was balancing precariously on a ladder, trying to reattach a loose transmitter coupling, when the tool he needed was just out of reach on his belt. Before he could climb down, Fang had plucked the precise instrument from the tool belt with surprising dexterity and handed it up to him. "Thanks, buddy," Marcus said absently, then froze as the implications sank in. Fang hadn't just grabbed any tool, he'd selected the exact specialized wrench needed for the job. A tool Marcus hadn't even pointed to or named. Later that day, Marcus conducted an impromptu intelligence test, laying out various tools and asking Fang to identify them by function rather than name. The results were stunning. Not only could Fang recognize the tools, but he seemed to understand their applications. "Dr. Ecletics, you need to see this," Marcus said into his comm unit. "I think we've been underestimating Vorlax intelligence by about several orders of magnitude." The subsequent tests confirmed Marcus's suspicions. Fang demonstrated problem-solving abilities comparable to those of the most intelligent non-humanoid species in the Confederation. He could follow complex instructions, anticipate needs, and even showed signs of abstract reasoning. "This is revolutionary," Dr. Ecletics declared, his eye stalks quivering with excitement. "All our previous studies of Vorlax specimens were conducted under laboratory conditions, often with sedated subjects. We never conceived they might possess this level of cognition. So why are they considered just dangerous animals?" Marcus asked, scratching Fang behind what passed for ears on the creature's complex head. Dr. Ecletics' eye stalks drooped slightly, "Because that's how we wanted to see them. Vorlax Prime has valuable mineral deposits, and classifying the native species as non-sentient makes resource extraction less ethically complicated." Marcus stared at the xenobiologist. "You're telling me the Confederation has been treating sentient beings as animals because it's convenient for mining operations?" "Politics and science have a complicated relationship, Mr. Quill," Dr. Ecletics replied diplomatically. The news of Fang's intelligence spread quickly through the station. Suddenly, Marcus found himself at the center of an interspecies diplomatic incident. Representatives from the Vorlax Conservation Society demanded access to Fang. A mining corporation sent legal teams to dispute the findings. And through it all, Fang remained calmly attached to Marcus's side, occasionally offering tools before Marcus even asked for them. The situation grew even more complex when other humans on the station began reporting that they too could communicate with Fang on a basic level. Dr. Lyndon Park, a human xenobotanist, discovered she could intuit Fang's needs and responses, despite having no previous contact with Vorlax beasts. "It's like there's something about human brain patterns that's compatible with Vorlax communication," Dr. Park explained during a research meeting. "Not telepathy exactly, but a form of empathic recognition that crosses species boundaries." This revelation led to an unprecedented development, a request from Vorlax Prime to send human diplomatic representatives. Apparently, a word had reached the mysterious homeworld that humans might be able to establish meaningful communication with a species the rest of the galaxy had written off as mindless predators. Commander Lubrix was not pleased. "Mr. Quill, you've turned a simple case of escaped wildlife into a full-blown diplomatic crisis," he said during a private meeting. "With all due respect, sir," Marcus replied, "I think this crisis existed long before Fang escaped. We've just exposed it." Nah. Lubrix couldn't argue with that logic. Moreover, the commander found himself in the awkward position of having to acknowledge that a human maintenance worker had made a discovery that eluded the Confederation's best scientists for decades. Decades. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Dr. Ecletics discovered why the multi-species lubricant spray had triggered Fang's initial response. It contained trace amounts of a mineral found only on Vorlax Prime, a mineral that, when oxidized, produced a scent nearly identical to the Vorlax nurturing hormone. "It's no wonder he bonded with you," Dr. Ecletics explained to Marcus. "Your tool literally smelled like home." As the diplomatic implications continued to unfold, life on the station gradually adjusted to the presence of a Vorlax beast who now assisted Marcus with maintenance duties. Other species still gave them a wide berth, but the outright terror had been replaced with cautious curiosity. Even Lieutenant Commander Grix had come around, especially after Fang helped diagnose a malfunctioning gravitic stabilizer that had puzzled the engineering team for weeks. The Vorlax had simply walked up to a specific panel, tapped it with a claw, and made a distinctive rumbling sound that Marcus somehow understood meant the problem is here. "I never thought I'd say this," Grix admitted afterward, "but you and your scary friend make a good team, Quill." Marcus grinned, patting Fang's massive shoulder. "He's not so scary once you get to know him." On cue, Fang yawned, displaying 3 rows of dagger-like teeth that could tear through metal. While Grix amended, mandibles clicking nervously, maybe a little scary. The crisis began, as these things often do, with a series of minor malfunctions that nobody connected until it was almost too late. First, the station's long-range communication array went offline. Then environmental systems started showing fluctuations. Finally, the gravitational stabilizers began to fail, section by section. Status report. Commander Lyrix demanded, his normally composed demeanor cracking as engineers and technicians scrambled around the command center. "Sir, we're registering cascading systems failures across all primary networks," reported the operations officer, a Dravian like Lyrix. "Backup systems are responding, but they're under strain." "Cause?" "Unknown, sir. Diagnostics show no physical damage, but systems are shutting down as if receiving deactivation commands." Lyrix's face darkened. "Sabotage? Possibly, or a virus in the main computer core. We're running deep scans now." The commander turned to his communications officer. "Get me every department head and senior technician. We need solutions, not theories." Marcus was in the middle of replacing a faulty power coupling when the call came through. "Quill here," he answered, wiping grease from his hands. "Report to command immediately," came the terse reply. "And bring your associate." Marcus raised an eyebrow at Fang, who tilted his massive head quizzically. "Looks like we're wanted upstairs, buddy." The command center was in controlled chaos when they arrived. Species that normally avoided each other were clustered around workstations, arguing over diagnostic readouts and emergency protocols. All conversation stopped momentarily when Fang entered, but the crisis quickly reclaimed everyone's attention. "Quill," Commander Lyrix acknowledged tersely. "We have a situation. Something is systematically shutting down critical station systems. Our technicians can't isolate the cause." Marcus glanced around at the assembled experts, the finest scientific and engineering minds in the Confederation, all looking equally baffled. "And you think I can help?" "Sir, with all due respect, I'm just a maintenance worker." "A maintenance worker who knows this station's systems inside and out," Lyrix countered, "and who has demonstrated unorthodox problem-solving abilities." His eyes flicked to Fang. Before Marcus could respond, the lights flickered, and gravity briefly fluctuated, causing everyone to grab onto the nearest stable object. "Life support is now affected," announced the operations officer grimly. "Estimate 4 hours until critical failure." The room erupted in a cacophony of suggestions, theories, and increasingly desperate proposals. Cut off the affected systems. Reset the main computer. Evacuate to the emergency shelters. Amid the chaos, Marcus noticed something odd. Fang had gone completely still, his multiple eyes fixed on one of the main display screens, showing a schematic of the station's power distribution network. The Vorlax was making a low, continuous sound unlike anything Marcus had heard before, not a growl or a purr, but something almost analytical. "Hey," Marcus said quietly, placing a hand on Fang's shoulder. "What do you see, buddy?" The room gradually fell silent, as everyone noticed the strange behavior of the fearsome creature. Fang moved toward the display, raising one clawed appendage to point at a seemingly innocuous junction point in the power grid, a maintenance access node in a rarely visited section of the station. "He's trying to tell us something," Marcus said, studying the schematic. "This node connects to almost every critical system through secondary pathways. It's not usually monitored because it's just a bypass junction." "What are you suggesting, Mr. Quill?" Lyrix asked. "I think Fang can sense something wrong there. Vorlax have sensory abilities we don't fully understand," Marcus turned to the xenobiologist. Dr. Eclatix, didn't your research show they can detect electrical disturbances? The scientist's eye stalk straightened with sudden realization. Yes. Their home planet has frequent electrical storms. They evolved the ability to sense electromagnetic anomalies as a survival mechanism. Marcus nodded. I need to check that junction. Now? I'll send a security team, Lyrix began. No time, Marcus interrupted. That section is going to be hard to navigate with systems failing. Fang and I can move faster alone. The commander hesitated only briefly. Go, but remain in contact. Marcus and Fang raced through the increasingly unstable station. Gravity fluctuated wildly in some sections, while emergency bulkheads randomly sealed and unsealed as control systems glitched. The few station personnel they encountered pressed themselves against walls, still more afraid of Fang than the failing station around them. The maintenance access junction was located in a narrow service corridor that even Marcus had rarely visited. As they approached, Fang's behavior changed dramatically. The Vorlax became agitated, emitting warning growls and positioning himself protectively in front of Marcus. Something's definitely wrong here, Marcus muttered, edging forward cautiously. The access panel looked normal at first glance, but when Marcus scanned it with his diagnostic tool, the readings made no sense. This is weird. The panel is drawing 10 times the power it should be, but not distributing it anywhere. Marcus carefully removed the panel cover and found himself staring at a device he'd never seen before. Complex and clearly not standard Confederation technology, it had integrated itself into the junction circuitry like some kind of technological parasite. Commander, Marcus called over his comm. I've found something. There's a device attached to the power junction. It looks like, well, I don't know what it looks like, but it's definitely not supposed to be here. Can you deactivate it? Lyrix asked tensely. Marcus studied the unfamiliar technology. I'm not sure. It's connected to multiple critical systems. Removing it incorrectly could accelerate the failures. Fang made a sudden movement, nudging Marcus aside with surprising gentleness. The Vorlax leaned in close to the device, his multiple eyes narrowing as he studied it from different angles. Then, with precision that belied his massive size, Fang extended a single claw and pointed to a specific component, a small, pulsing node at the center of the device. You want me to focus on this part? Marcus asked. Fang made an affirmative sound. Marcus examined the component more closely. Commander, I think this is some kind of control module. If I can isolate it from the power supply without triggering whatever failsafe it might have. Mr. Quill, Lyrix's voice was tight with tension. We are now estimating less than 2 hours until life support failure. Whatever you're going to do it now. Marcus took a deep breath, scanning the device one more time. All right, I'm going to try something. If this works, the device should deactivate without triggering a cascade failure. With steady hands, Marcus carefully began bypassing the device's power inputs, rerouting the connections to create a stable loop that would allow him to remove the control module without interrupting the flow to critical systems. It was delicate work, the kind of improvisation that had earned humans their reputation for unorthodox problem-solving. Throughout the process, Fang remained intensely focused, occasionally making soft sounds that somehow guided Marcus's work. It was as if the Vorlax could see connections and relationships in the technology that Marcus couldn't, communicating them in a way that transcended language. Almost there, Marcus murmured, sweat beading on his forehead. Just need to, there. The control module separated cleanly from the device, its pulsing light fading. Almost immediately, the station's systems began to stabilize. Commander, Marcus reported, grinning with relief, I think we did it. The device is deactivated. Confirmed, came the amazed response. Systems are returning to normal function across the board. Mr. Quill, you and your colleague have saved this station. Marcus turned to Fang, whose massive head was cocked to one side in what could only be described as satisfaction. We make a pretty good team, don't we, buddy? Fang responded by giving Marcus's face another sandpaper lick. Yeah, Marcus winced, wiping his cheek. I love you too, big guy. The aftermath of the crisis brought changes to Nexus 9 that nobody could have predicted. Analysis of the sabotage device revealed it to be of Thraxian origin, a rival faction that had been attempting to destabilize Confederation operations in this sector for years. The fact that such a sophisticated device had been discovered not by security sweeps or computer diagnostics, but by a maintenance worker and his Vorlax pet, caused considerable embarrassment among station leadership. More significantly, it forced a reevaluation of both human capabilities and Vorlax intelligence. 1 week after the incident, Marcus found himself in the uncomfortable position of being the guest of honor at a formal recognition ceremony. He stood awkwardly on the podium in the station's main gathering hall, wearing a dress uniform that felt at least one size too small, and with Fang looming beside him like an obsidian statue. For exceptional service to Nexus 9 and the Galactic Confederation, Commander Lyrix announced, his voice echoing through the packed hall. I am pleased to present Marcus Quill and Fang of Vorlax Prime with the Stellar Service Medallion. As the commander placed the medallion around Marcus's neck, then somewhat awkwardly draped a specially commissioned larger version over Fang's head, but the assembled crowd erupted in applause. Well, most of them applauded. Some species flashed bioluminescent patterns while others vibrated appendages in their cultural equivalent of approval. Additionally, Lyrix continued once the noise had subsided, in recognition of Mr. Quill's unique abilities, I am appointing him to the newly created position of Interspecies Liaison Officer, with a focus on enhancing communication between humans, Vorlax, and other Confederation species. Marcus blinked in surprise. He glanced at Fang, who was rumbling with what Marcus had come to recognize as amusement. The Vorlax had clearly understood the announcement before Marcus had processed it himself. Sir, Marcus stammered, I'm just a maintenance tech. I don't have any diplomatic training. Lyrix smiled, the expression making his scaled face seem almost human. You have something more important, a natural ability to connect with species that our formal diplomats struggle with. The Vorlax delegation has specifically requested you serve as their primary contact. A murmur ran through the crowd as a tall, elegantly dressed Vorlax stepped forward. Unlike Fang, this one wore an ornate vest embedded with pulsing crystalline nodes communication devices, Marcus realized. I am Ambassador Vorlax, the Vorlax announced, its voice emerging from a translator device. The Vorlax High Council has reviewed the incident data. Your recognition of Fang as a sentient equal rather than a pet or creature created a bond our scientists have been unable to replicate in decades of research. Marcus felt his face flush. I just treated him with respect. Precisely, Vorlax replied. You demonstrated what our species has long suspected, that true communication requires emotional intelligence as much as technological interfaces. Your experience with Fang confirms that Vorlax and humans can establish deeper connections than previously thought possible. Commander Lyrix nodded. Which is why your new role is so vital. The incident has exposed serious gaps in our security protocols and in our understanding of species we've categorized as non-communicative. Your first assignment will be to establish a training program for station personnel on Vorlax communication methods. Fang leaned slightly against Marcus's side, a gesture of solidarity that didn't go unnoticed by the crowd. Additionally, Ambassador Vorlax continued, we request that you and Fang visit Vorlax Prime as honored guests. Our scientists believe your natural abilities may help unlock communication barriers with other species in Confederation space. Marcus swallowed hard. From maintenance tech to interstellar diplomat in under a week. And what about my regular duties? Lyrix smiled. Consider yourself permanently reassigned, with a substantial pay increase and new quarters in the diplomatic section. Though I suspect Fang will still want to visit the maintenance tunnels occasionally. Fang rumbled in confirmation, causing scattered laughter through the crowd. As the ceremony concluded, and people began to disperse, Dr. Alana Chen approached, a mixture of apology and excitement on her face. I was wrong about both of you, she admitted. My instruments detected Fang's neural activity, but I misinterpreted what I was seeing because it didn't match human or other known patterns. I'd like to collaborate with you on a paper about interspecies communication, if you're willing. Marcus nodded, still trying to absorb everything that had happened. "I think I'll need to consult with my partner first," he said, placing a hand on Fang's side. Later that evening, in their new quarters spacious enough for Fang to move comfortably, Marcus sat on the floor beside his friend, the medallion catching the light as it rested on his desk. "So, diplomat," he said to Fang, "ready for your first official assignment?" The Vorlax rumbled softly, then projected an image that made Marcus laugh out loud, a perfect mental picture of both of them, looking completely overwhelmed, standing before a committee of various alien species. "Yeah, I feel the same way," Marcus agreed. "But we figured out how to stop a bomb. How much harder can diplomacy be?" Fang's response was another image, this one of the two of them navigating a complicated maze that seemed to shift and change with each step. "Point taken," Marcus conceded. "But at least we're in it together." As if in agreement, the lights in the room dimmed slightly, then brightened again. Marcus glanced up, surprised, before realizing what had happened. "Station's AI finally recognized you as a resident," he explained to Fang. "You've got environmental control privileges now." It was a small thing, perhaps, but symbolic of the larger changes taking place throughout Nexus 9. The station itself was adapting, just as Marcus and Fang were, to a new understanding of what communication and connection could mean across the vast differences between species. The darkness of space stretched beyond their viewport, filled with stars and, somewhere out there, countless other beings waiting to be truly understood.